The FBI is updating its analysis on the Texas Synagogue attack during a webinar hosted by the Anti-Defamation League. FBI Director Christopher Wray said in part, quote, "This was not some random occurrence. It was intentional. It was symbolic, and we're not going to tolerate anti-Semitism in this country." Now, Wray's comments come after the Bureau initially said the attack was not directly linked to the Jewish community. Of course, this is when the hostage taker held 4 people at a synagogue for nearly 11 hours last week. Joining us to discuss is Rabbi Yaakov Menken. He's the director for the Coalition for Jews. Rabbi, welcome to the program. Thanks for coming on today and talking about this. Of course, this was a very terrifying situation for those individuals who were held hostage. Do you think our nation's top law agents are aware of these threats to Americans, religious Americans, especially American Jews?
I think there's been entirely too much effort to muddy the waters, and that's now affecting the FBI and law enforcement. I mean, it was obvious from the first seconds that this was an anti-Semitic attack. What the initial field agent said was actually substantively correct, that the fellow who came barging in with a gun was not actually pursuing any sort of issue affecting the Jewish community or Israel at all. He was advocating for the release of a anti-American terrorist who shot at American forces when she was arrested. I mean, she's called Lady Al-Qaeda for a reason. And yet, of course, he went into a synagogue. That's what made it obvious that it was an anti-Semitic attack.
Yeah.
And yet it took the FBI an awfully long time to just kind of acknowledge the obvious.
Right. The obvious, as you clearly point out, we knew from the beginning. It was linked, of course. I just want to ask you, Rabbi, when it comes to your congregants practicing their faith and showing up at synagogues, do they feel safe to do so?
I am, as you said, the managing director of Coalition for Jewish Values. We're an organization rather than a particular synagogue. So, but I can tell you what I find in the pews, which is that people, it's not that we feel unsafe, because sadly, we're very used to it. It is not like the situation in Europe right now, where you have military soldiers with automatic rifles outside synagogues routinely. It's not like that at all yet. However, certainly before the High Holy Days, we've already seen increased police protection. We see special fencing. Look at that, the synagogue in the background. You can see the fencing around it. Churches don't need that fencing. And by the way, mosques don't need it either. So all of this muddying of the waters, talking about Islamophobia as a cover for those who support terrorism against Jews, that's where this problem is coming from. And the biggest problem is for law enforcement to start falling for this woke nonsense and failing to act to protect those who are actually being targeted.
Yeah, it's an American right, the freedom to practice your religion and, of course, do so safely. Rabbi Menken, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, let's bring back in our panelists, Bobby Eberle and Jessie Duff, to get their take on this as well. You know, Bobby, during a press conference just earlier this week, the president was not asked about this hostage situation, nor was he asked specifically about the safety of Americans and their right to practice their religion without fear of being taken hostage or being under attack. Were you disappointed in the fact that that didn't come up? And should the president have done more to address the situation?
Well, I was disappointed but not surprised, because you see this, if it doesn't fit the narrative of the oppressed group of the day, then they won't talk about it. And we see these attacks increasing. We see that the FBI, they might be aware, as you alluded in your intro, but what are they doing? Are they taking it seriously? Are they on that situational awareness where if it were a mosque or something else that fits in the narrative that gets more TV coverage, what would they be doing differently? That's a big question to ask, because the rabbi is right. We see this happening and everyone turns the other way. And the other thing that's important is the mixed message that's coming out of the Democrat Party, where they say they support the Jewish community, yet representative after representative or spokesman after spokesman keeps blasting Israel, keeps blasting the Jewish community and claiming this Islamophobia, which is nowhere near what's really going on.
Yeah, you make a good point there. You know, Jessie Jane, you wonder where the priorities of members of the FBI are right now. What's on their radar, and why are they missing this particular instance of terror?
Because, you know, we look at the FBI as having an extreme focus on tracking everybody down on social media from January 6th. How long were they posting photos of people that were out there on January 6th? I mean, close to a year. You know, it just seemed, it was outrageous that they were so aggressive on pursuing something like that. But on this, the rabbi made a very good point. You don't see fences around Christian churches or mosques, but yet you do see fences around the Jewish synagogues for the obvious fact that they have faced so much harassment. It was not any confusing issue for any American to know why that man went in there. He made it very clear what his agenda was. And to suggest that we are phobiatic of people who are trying to kill us is now watering down our law enforcement so that they are not reacting in the appropriate way and as aggressively as they should. So shame on the FBI for being slow to the table on this.
Yeah, absolutely.